just like you.
Hey guys, today we will literally be going in depth on the Dell Optiplex 990. This group project was made by Caleb, Jamaica, and Kayshawn. Enjoy. The CPU, also known as the Central Processing Unit, carries out the instructions of a computer program from the RAM. Nearly all CPUs follow the fetch, decode, and execute steps in their operation. This specific CPU is an Intel Core i5-2500, and its speed is 3.1 GHz and has 4 cores.
A motherboard is a circuit board containing all of the ports that are needed for every component of the PC. This motherboard's form factor is an ATX. It has one chipset, 4 RAM slots, 2 PCIe slots, and can hold a maximum of 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. It has 3 SATA ports and a 24-pin connector for the power supply.
The power supply is the main source of power for all components within the PC. The power supply converts alternating currents into direct currents, which is the only form of current a computer can use. You connect the power supply through the 24-pin connector located on the motherboard.
The RAM, aka random access memory, ties hand in hand with the CPU to carry out program instructions. These specific sticks of RAM are 2 gigabytes each and are DDR3 compatible.
The hard drive is a mechanical storage drive that has a physical disk inside of it and moving arm. It reads and writes data as well as hold programs and the operating system. A optical drive uses laser lights to read discs and is connected through a SATA port. Most people use an optical drive to watch movies, play a game, or to burn discs.
The graphics card is an expansion card which generates a feed of output images to a display. Most video cards are not limited to a simple display output. Their integrated graphics processor can perform additional processing, removing this task from the CPU. The slots available on the graphics processor can be a DVI, a VGA, and an HDMI port. A heatsink is a heat exchanger that transfers the heat generated by an electric or mechanical device to the fan. There are different types of heat sinks, such as a passive that cools down the chipset and doesn't require a fan. And then there's active that cools down the CPU and does use a fan. Speaking of fan, there are multiple fans around the motherboard that cools down parts or manages airflow.
The BIOS chip is the chip that holds the BIOS within it. In the BIOS, you can make multiple changes to your hardware. For example, you can enable and disable ports, adjust the CPU's speed, and edit administrational permissions. Since the BIOS is read-only, everything that is changed within the BIOS is saved within the CMOS chip. The CMOS chip must always receive power. This is where the CMOS battery comes in. It continuously supplies power to the CMOS chip even when the computer is powered down.